The mansion sat on a ridge like a sealed secret, glass, stone, and a silence that didn't feel empty so much as guarded. Gardens looked perfect. Hedges kept their shape like soldiers. But perfection can be lonely. And loneliness, when it has enough rooms to wander through, becomes a presence of its own. Before we go further, where are you watching from today? Drop it in the comments. It always amazes me how stories connect strangers across cities, countries, and continents. Julie paused at the wrought iron gate, the offer letter soft from being folded and unfolded 100 times. "We are pleased to inform you," the words felt like a hand pulling her forward. She tucked a stray curl behind her ear, whispered a quick prayer, and stepped inside. She had worked many jobs, some kind, some cruel, all necessary. But this one felt different. Not just a paycheck. A bridge. A way to keep the light on under her dream, fashion. Fabric. Form. A life that didn't end with exhaustion, but began with it. A silver-haired driver met her at the entrance, the kind of man whose eyes told the truth even when his mouth didn't. "Welcome, Miss Julie," he said, voice low, respectful. "My name is Thomas. If you need anything, directions, timing, tea stronger than it should be, I'm around." "Thank you," she said, grateful for the softness in his tone. Inside, the air changed. Cooler. Polished floors, white orchids, a chandelier that made the ceiling look like a night sky trapped in crystal. On the wall, frames. Family photos. A smiling woman with bright eyes. A man beside her, handsome and stern, but less stern when he looked at her. 3 children. In one photo, the smallest child was a baby in the woman's arms, cheeks pressed to her shoulder. Julie slowed. Thomas followed her gaze. "Mrs. Richard," he said gently. "She passed away. Plane crash. Years ago now." He hesitated. "The youngest was born speech-impaired. The house has been quieter since." Quieter. Julie understood the word could hold a world of ache. "I'm sorry," she whispered. He nodded once, then lifted his chin toward the study. "He'll want to see you first." The study door opened before they knocked. Mr. Richard filled the frame, tall, composed, not a hair out of place, and an expression that could freeze a waterfall mid-drop. People sometimes used the word strong when they meant hard. With him, it was both. "Miss Julie." Not a question. An assessment. His eyes didn't wander, they measured. "You've come recommended. We keep routines here. If you respect them, we won't have problems." He stood aside, letting her pass as if he were letting weather in. "I'm grateful for the opportunity, sir," she said, hands light at her sides, chin steady. She refused to shrink. He noticed that. A small flicker in the eyes. Then gone. The conversation was efficient. Hours. Duties. Schedules. The youngest child's therapy days. The cook's timing. What time homework began. What time lights were out. He never said please. He didn't need to. Everything in this house looked like it had learned to obey. When she stepped out, Thomas gave her the smallest smile. "Not so terrible," he murmured. "Not terrible," she agreed. "Just, precise." Precise is his way of keeping everything from falling apart. Julie tucked that sentence away. It would matter later. The first test came before introductions. A housekeeper, Fatima, handed Julie a small tray, 2 glasses of juice, a plate of cut fruit. "For the children," she said. "They're in the sunroom." "I'll take it," Julie said, careful with the tray, careful with her steps. She could feel eyes on her, the house had many eyes, staff, portraits, the kind of walls that learned to listen. At the sunroom door, she paused, breathed, and went in. 3 faces looked up. Three judgments she could almost hear forming. The oldest, a teenage boy with confidence worn like cologne, slouched deeper into his chair, sneakers on a priceless rug. He raised an eyebrow. New. The middle child, a girl 1 grade younger, didn't slouch. She sat tall, chin slightly raised, a gaze that sliced. The kind of sharp that comes from being wounded then deciding never to be cut again. And then, the youngest. A little girl with soft brown curls and a solemn mouth. Her eyes flicked from the tray to Julie's hands to the window and back. She didn't speak. She didn't try to. She had been born speech impaired. She didn't know the sound of her own voice, how it might travel into a room and be received. She'd learned to keep her world inside her eyes. Julie smiled, set the tray down, and offered fruit. "Hi," she said softly. "I'm Julie." The boy smirked. "She doesn't talk," he announced like a dare. "She can't." The middle child added, "And we don't need a nanny. We need someone who doesn't quit after 2 days." Julie kept her smile. "Lucky me," she said, "I'm good at day 3. The boy tried not to grin. He almost succeeded. She offered the smallest girl a slice of strawberry. The child's fingers hovered, then lifted, then retreated. "Not ready." That was all right. Trust is never a thing you throw, it's a thing you place down and step back from. "Snack first, homework next," Julie said, quietly confident. "I'll be at the table if you need help." "We won't," the middle child said. Julie took a seat anyway. Homework began with the sound of pencils. Silence that was not hostile, just heavy with habits. The boy tapped his foot. The girl wrote without erasing, without error. The little one drew circles, then colored each a different shade, careful, precise. Julie looked from child to child and saw different kinds of defense. She knew them all. She had worn some herself. 10 minutes in, the test arrived. The boy, accidentally, bumped the table so the juice glass rolled. It wobbled, waltzed, then committed to disaster. Julie reached. Too late. Orange spilled like a bright mistake, soaking the corner of the girl's math worksheet. The middle child sat back. "You'll need a mop," she said evenly. Thomas had warned Julie without words in the hallway, "They will test you. Not because they are cruel. Because they are afraid you will leave." She heard it again now. She stood, dabbed the spill with napkins, not frantic, not flustered. Calm speeds up time. Panic slows it. "It's okay," she said, gentle, to no one and to everyone. "We'll start a fresh page." The boy waited for the flinch, the sigh, the lecture. None came. He frowned. Not at her. At the failed experiment. When the fruit was mostly gone and the homework mostly done, the youngest held up her drawing. Circles. A small bird in one. A tree in another. A little house in a third. The kind of art that tells you everything without explaining anything. "It's beautiful," Julie said, and she meant it. "May I? Can I put it on the fridge?" The child hesitated, then nodded once. "Small. Enough." As they moved to the kitchen, Julie noticed the photograph again, the mother's bright eyes, and wondered if the youngest remembered the softness of that shoulder, the smell of that hair, the feel of that heartbeat. Grief can be a country you're born into without a passport. Dinner was unsurprising. Food placed. Plates cleared. Please and thank you from some. From others, silence. The little one ate quietly, accepted cut vegetables like offerings, looked up at Julie 3 times. A start is a start. Bedtime came, and the house changed temperature. Lights dimmed. Footsteps softened. The night staff moved like the idea of sleep. In the youngest child's room, the moon was a pale coin on the floor. Soft toys lined the shelf, all with the kind of clean that says they are loved but not tattered by it. Julie straightened the duvet and glanced at the framed photo on the nightstand. The baby in the mother's arms, cheek to cheek, the father's hand at the mother's back. The past, forever frozen without being asked. Julie sat on the edge of the bed. "I'm going to be here in the mornings," she said, "and at bedtime. We'll have our routine. We'll make it ours." She spoke like people do when they're building a bridge one plank at a time. The child watched her. Those eyes. Deep with things she couldn't say and might not ever. But eyes have their own vocabulary. Julie breathed in. She had promised herself that if she ever entered a room like this, where pain had painted the walls, she would bring sound. Not noise. Story. "My mother used to say," Julie began, voice low, "that a story is a key. It opens doors we can't see with the lights on." The child's gaze didn't shift, but the air did. "Once," Julie said, "there was a little bird who lived at the edge of a great forest. She was born with wings that didn't work the way other wings did. When the wind came, the other birds rose like a song, and she stayed on the branch and tried not to cry. The others called it broken. The little bird didn't like that word. She didn't feel broken. She felt different. And different is a place, too. A pause. A breath. The room listened. The little bird loved the sky anyway. She loved its color in the morning and its secrets at night. She loved watching everyone else fly. She learned the language of leaves. The rhythm of rain. She told herself, maybe flight can be learned slowly. Maybe my wings will be strong in ways the others won't expect. Julie could feel the child's attention like a small light warming her cheek. Not a word. Not needed. Presence is a kind of speech. Then one day, Julie continued, the wind changed. It wasn't the kind that took other birds high. It was a wind that bent grass and whispered to the branches, "Try again." The little bird stood. She opened what she had. She didn't rise far. Not even a hand higher. But for the first time, her feet left the branch. Julie stopped there. On purpose. Curiosity is a bridge you only build halfway if you want someone to cross it tomorrow. She tucked the duvet under the child's arms. "We'll finish tomorrow," she said, soft. "If you want." The child's lashes lowered, then lifted. That was her yes. Julie switched off the lamp and left a nightlight casting a soft halo against the wall. At the doorway, she looked back. The little one had turned her head toward the place where Julie had been sitting, as if listening to the shape of her absence. Julie felt something settle inside her, resolve, maybe, or the first thread of a bond that could be pulled into a rope. In the hall, Fatima waited, arms folded kindly. How did she do? She listened, Julie said, smiling. That's a lot. It is, Fatima agreed. For a first night, it is everything. Downstairs, Thomas poured tea that tasted like conversation. You didn't flinch, he said. I wanted to, Julie confessed. When the juice spilled. When he measured me and found me, not anything yet. When I saw the photos. You stayed. I stayed. He nodded. That's the hardest part for most. He leaned back, studying her. What's your dream, Miss Julie? Everyone here has one, even if they forgot how to say it. Julie almost laughed. It felt too soon to speak it out loud in this house where silence had its own power. But if you don't name dreams, they forget they belong to you. I want to design, she said. Clothes that feel like courage. Suits that fit like decisions. Dresses that move like relief. Thomas's mouth tilted. You speak like a story even when you aren't telling one. She sipped. I'm learning to make room for both. Later, when the house was almost asleep, Julie wandered into the laundry room to look for extra linens. On the shelf, someone had left a small tin box. Not fancy. Just careful. She nearly put it back, then noticed the tiny embossed pattern along the lid, circles like the ones the little girl drew. She didn't open it. She set it exactly where it had been and stepped away. Some doors wait for the right key. Some keys wait for the right pair of hands. In her small room under the eaves, she unpacked the three things that mattered most. A worn sketchbook, a pencil case, and a photo of her own mother at a sewing machine, eyes tired but bright. "You're still the bravest person I know," Julie whispered to the photo. "Teach me how to keep going." She sat at the little desk and sketched. Lines first, then shapes. A lapel that felt like an answer. A shoulder that could carry weight without looking like it was trying to. She drew until the house's silence softened into the kind that wraps instead of presses. When sleep finally came, it did not erase worry. It placed it on the pillow beside her like a companion who agreed not to speak until morning. At 5:30, the mansion breathed in again. Kitchens wake first. So do people with responsibilities. Julie showered, tied her hair back, and met the day with sneakers and steady steps. Breakfast was routine: eggs, toast, fruit. The boy came in, nodding at her like he'd decided to reserve judgment for later. The middle child entered with a book in her hand and questions in her eyes. The youngest padded in on quiet feet, hair a little wild on one side from sleep. "Morning," Julie said, "not too bright, not too soft." "Toast." The little one's eyes flicked to the plate, then to Julie. She made a small motion, 2 fingers, a tap. Fatima caught it, mouthed, "Please." Julie smiled. "Please," she said, handing over the toast, "and thank you for coming to breakfast." The child took it, sat, and nibbled like she had a secret appointment with hunger. Mr. Richard entered last, exactly on time, as if meeting a clock he'd made himself. He surveyed the room quickly, the way leaders do when they're not trying to lead so much as keep things upright. His gaze brushed over Julie, paused, then moved on. Approval would not be spoken here. Not yet. "Good morning," he said, and it carried. He said nothing more. He didn't have to. The house had learned to read the spaces between his words. After he left for work, schedules began. Julie checked the little one's therapy folder. Speech exercises practiced through pictures, gestures, and a tablet that spoke the words she chose. Julie knelt beside her. "We'll learn together," she said. "You'll show me what helps. I'll show you that I won't give up." The child studied her face the way some people study maps. Then she tapped the tablet and chose one word. "Stay." Julie swallowed. "I will." They worked through morning, matching pictures to words, building small bridges between thought and expression. The middle child lingered in the doorway twice, pretending to look for a charger she didn't need. The boy came in to ask a question he already knew the answer to. Neither admitted curiosity aloud. That was okay. Curiosity prefers doorways. At noon, in the garden, the youngest reached for Julie's hand without looking first to see if it was there. Hands remember safety. They also remember its absence. Julie held on lightly, as if holding a butterfly that had chosen to land. "Tomorrow," Julie said, "we'll continue the bird's story." The little one tilted her head. A question without a word. "We stop where she left the branch," Julie said. "And we ask, what if leaving the branch was never the point?" A cloud moved. Sun fell on the child's hair like permission. She blinked, slow, deciding. Then she nodded once again. Yes. By late afternoon, the house had adjusted to Julie as if she'd been a piece missing from a puzzle no one admitted was incomplete. Thomas didn't hover anymore. Fatima handed over a key to the pantry. The cook asked if she preferred cinnamon or vanilla in the night milk. The children did not test her with spills. They tested her with quiet questions launched like paper planes. "Do you like football?" the boy tossed, casual. "I like whoever tries," Julie answered. "That's not a team," he said, smirking. "It could be." The middle child asked nothing but listened to everything. She passed the counter where Julie's sketchbook lay open a fraction, glanced down, then away. "Do you draw?" she asked later, as if the question had found her despite herself. "Sometimes," Julie said. "Mostly when my hands need a place to speak." "Can I see?" It came out clipped, like the request might break in the air. "Another day," Julie said kindly. "When seeing won't feel like stealing." The girl nodded, almost relieved. Evening slid in dressed like gray silk. Bath. Pajamas. Night milk. The little one's room again, the nightlight ready, the duvet waiting for small hands to find their favorite crease. Julie sat at the same edge of the bed. "The little bird," she murmured, thought flight would feel like a victory. But do you know what it felt like? A question. What now? So, she tried again. And again. She rose the height of a leaf. Then the height of a flower. Then the height of a fence post. The forest didn't notice. But she did. She noticed her own courage. The child's eyes glowed the way eyes do when they are seeing something no one else can. And on the day she finally rose the height of a branch that wasn't hers, she looked down and saw something new, not distance. Direction. Julie could have finished the story. She didn't. Not yet. She smoothed the duvet, traced the edge of the night with her voice. "We'll find out tomorrow what she does with direction." The little one did something then that no one had coached her to do, that no tablet suggested. She touched Julie's wrist. Light. Quick. Then let go. It said, in a language older than words, "I heard you. Come back." "I will," Julie promised, and meant it. She stepped into the hallway and almost collided with Mr. Richard. He stood there, sleeves rolled, tie loosened, the look of a man who had wrestled a day and pinned it but didn't feel triumphant. He glanced past her toward the bed. "She's asleep?" he asked, softer than morning. "Almost," Julie said. She listened. He nodded once, and it was not approval. It was something more dangerous to a man who lived in control, hope. He folded it away quickly, cleared his throat and stepped aside. "Good night, Miss Julie." "Good night, sir." She walked past him, held by the heavy quiet of a house that had learned to breathe differently for the first time in a long time. Downstairs, the chandelier made constellations on the floor. In the kitchen, a single glass waited, clean, upside down on a towel. Fatima's way of saying there will be tea if you need it. Thomas had left the front hall lamp burning softer than usual. All these small mercies add up. They always do. In her room, Julie opened her sketchbook again. She drew the little bird. Then, beside it, a lapel with a line she hadn't tried before, sharp, then soft, like authority learning to be kind. She labeled it in the margin, direction. And just as she set the pencil down, a thought pressed itself to the front of her mind with the certainty of a knock. "This house looks finished," it said, "but it isn't. This family looks intact," it said, "but it isn't. Something here wants to heal. Something here will fight it." Julie closed the book and turned off the lamp. The night settled around her like a promise and a warning in one breath. She didn't know it yet, but the story she had just begun would not only teach a child to reach for sound. It would uncover a secret in this house, change the way a father looks at love, and force Julie to choose between the dream she carries and the family that's starting to carry her. The mansion woke to ritual. Plates chimed. Shoes counted steps on marble. A clock in the hall clicked like a metronome that refused to rush. Rules ran everything: breakfast at 7, tutors by 9, no chatter near the study, and absolutely no crumbs on the East Wing carpets. Rules can keep a house in line. They cannot teach a heart to breathe. Julie tied her hair back and checked the youngest child's therapy folder, pages of symbol boards, progress notes, and the quiet question that lived between every line: how do we help a child born speech-impaired build a life that still sings? She pressed the folder to her chest, inhaled mint and courage, and stepped into the day. "Good morning," she said as she reached the dining room. The eldest sprawled in his chair like he owned gravity, fork tapping the rim of his plate. The middle child sat with her spine straight and her gaze sharper than cut glass. The youngest arrived last, curls a little wild from sleep, bare feet whispering over tile. "We're not morning people," the boy muttered without looking up. "Lucky for you," Julie said, laying toast on plates, "I'm fluent in night owl." His fork stopped tapping. Curiosity replaced the automatic smirk, if only for a second. The middle child eyed Julie. "You're trying too hard." Julie leaned in, voice low, conspiratorial. "Or not hard enough yet." The youngest didn't speak, she couldn't, but she pushed blueberries into constellations and slid one tiny star toward Julie's side of the table. A small invitation. A smaller test. Julie placed a blueberry back beside the child's plate, completing the shape. "Nice," she whispered. "Orion's belt. With extra blueberries." From the doorway, Mr. Richard paused. He didn't sit. He surveyed. Eyes took in the room, weighed risk, measured calm. They skimmed over the smallest girl, brown curls, solemn eyes, and landed on Julie for half a beat too long. "Good morning," he said, a tone that made the air straighten its posture. "Good morning, sir," came the reply, from staff, children, the house itself. He left as quietly as he arrived. When his footsteps faded, sound returned, cutlery, whispered bickering, a soft tap-tap as the youngest pressed 2 fingers to her plate, a shared sign from last night. "Yes. I'm here." "Cinnamon in the night milk?" Julie asked. The child tapped again and pressed her palm towards Julie, another sign they'd made. "Please." "Cinnamon it is," Julie said, and something like warmth moved through the room. Children test when they don't trust the ground. They push to see what holds. By mid-morning the eldest forgot his homework. "It's in the media room," he said, bored and daring at once. "Far corner." "Great," Julie said, handing him a kitchen timer. 2 minutes. "Go." He blinked, then sprinted. 90 seconds later he returned, panting, holding the folder like treasure. "You beat the clock," she said. "Again later?" He shrugged, cheeks a little pink. "Whatever." The middle child planted herself in the pantry doorway. "Staff only." "Perfect," Julie said, waiting. "I'm staff. And sometimes, when the kitchen smells like cinnamon, I'm family." "Want a cookie for your new position?" "Director of doorways?" A pause. Then a reluctant half-smile. "Fine. Oatmeal raisin." "Excellent choice," Julie said, passing 2 and taking 1 for herself. "Leaders eat." Down the hall, Thomas, silver-haired, soft-eyed, tipped his head toward the gardens. "After lessons. Air is kinder than walls." "Helps who?" Julie asked. "Everyone," he said. "Especially the ones who pretend they don't need it." They went outside before lunch. The boy rolled a football with his foot, pretending disinterest. The middle child carried a book she never opened. The youngest laced daisies across the grass in a careful row, then glanced up to see if anyone noticed. "I see your ladder," Julie murmured, kneeling beside her. The child tapped the lowest rung. 1. The next. 2. She pressed her palm flat over the 3rd, "Stay." Julie gently set her hand on top of the same rung. "I'm here." The eldest kicked the football toward Julie, harder than necessary. She stopped it with a precise touch, let it roll to her arch, and popped it back with a clean strike. It sailed. Landed at his feet. His eyebrows rose against his will. "You play?" he asked. "Only when someone dares me." He fought a smile and lost. The middle child folded her arms. "You'll leave like the others," she said, but the sentence had a question tucked inside it. Julie met her eyes. "What made the last one leave?" She said we were too much. "Were you?" The girl looked away. "We're not easy." "No one worth knowing is," Julie said softly. "I didn't come here for easy." 2 days later, the three of them sat in a waiting room that smelled like lemon cleanser and tired hope. The youngest turned a paper pinwheel, watching how air made something simple move. The doctor adjusted his glasses and flipped through a chart. Comprehension is strong. Alternative communication excellent. But given the congenital impairment, oral speech may remain limited. I recommend managing expectations. Julie's jaw tightened. Are there new AAC apps with customizable boards? More dynamic voice banks? We could embed choices in context, not just nouns, give her agency, not only vocabulary. The doctor's look was kind, professional, practiced. Hope is valuable, Miss Julie. False hope isn't. Hope is fuel, Julie said, keeping her voice even. We're not asking her to do the impossible. We're asking her to keep choosing. In the car, silence rode along like a fourth passenger. Mr. Richards' hands were precise on the wheel, knuckles pale with control. "You're persistent," he said at last. "Would you rather I wasn't?" A beat. Something softened. "No." "Then let's try a different angle," she said. Story-based boards. Choices that build a world. Again. My turn. Stay. Different. He checked the rearview mirror. The little girl watched Julie as if reading a mouth is the closest thing to hearing a promise. "Try it," he said. It wasn't permission. It was faith on probation. They built new boards together. Julie hand drew tiny icons the girl recognized: Thomas's cap, Fatima's red kettle, the oak table, the garden swing, a little bird on a branch. Each night at bed, Julie continued the story. The little bird rose the height of a leaf, she whispered. Then a flower. Then a fence post. Not high. Not yet. But higher than yesterday. The child pressed bird, again, try. Again, Julie echoed, heart kicking. Try. The next night, different, bird, strong. Yes, Julie breathed. Different can be strong. They added verbs that felt like power: choose, help, stop, go, together. The little girl began pairing them on her own: Julie, stay, story, please. Milk, cinnamon, night. Bird, again, brave. Fatima watched from the doorway and wiped her eyes with the corner of her apron. Thomas hovered in the hall pretending to polish a banister that already shone. Artists sign their work, Julie told the child one evening, pinning a crayon bird above the bed. The little one printed her name in uneven letters. Letter by letter, she stepped into herself. Eat, Fatima said one afternoon, pushing a warm biscuit into Julie's hand. I'm not hungry, Julie lied. Hungry comes later, Fatima said. Eat strength now. In the garage, Thomas coaxed an old SUV into not sounding like a complaint. Everyone here has a dream, he told Julie. Some remember. Some don't. Mine remembers me, Julie said. Design. Suits that fit like decisions. Dresses that move like relief. He smiled. Then stay long enough to name a collection after this place when it stops hurting. Deal. The flyer came home folded like a secret, kindergarten story writing competition. The little one placed it on the kitchen table like treasure and tapped story, write, please. You want to enter? Julie asked. A firm nod. So, they did what dreamers do, they worked nightly. Julie spoke softly, the child chose words, drew pictures, wrote lines in shaky letters that hummed with truth. The little bird is not broken, the child printed slowly. She is different. Different is away. The eldest hovered in the doorway and pretended he wasn't listening. The middle child rinsed a plate that was already clean. Mr. Richard passed the entry and slowed, the way a man slows for music he doesn't recognize but wants to hear again. On the last night, the little girl patted the chair beside her and pressed Julie, "Sit, here, together." "Always," Julie said, sitting. The child placed her palm over the final drawing, the bird perched higher than before, eyes bright, and nodded once. "Mine." "It's yours," Julie said, and the child smiled with her whole face. Auditoriums smell like varnish and nerves. Children fidgeted with papers. Parents whispered in rows. Teachers smiled the kind of smile that says it took 12 emails to make this happen and it was worth it. Julie sat at the back with Thomas and Fatima. Mr. Richard took an aisle seat, tie neat, shoulders squared. The eldest pretended to be bored, the middle child pretended she wasn't excited. Names were called. Stories were read, some aloud by brave little voices, some by teachers for kids whose words lived better on paper, some projected in crayon brightness. When the little one's name echoed across the mic, a quiet went through Julie that felt like prayer. The child walked to the front, small chin lifted, metal ribbon not yet on her neck, hands holding the story like a crown. On the screen, a bird, a forest, the word again in letters too big and perfect for anyone but a child to write. The teacher read slowly, reverently. The little bird measures flying in brave. She is not broken. She is different. Different is away. She tries again. A hush. Then applause that didn't feel polite, it felt like we see you. Halfway through, the child did something no one expected. She stood a little taller and placed her hand over her heart. It was small. It was everything. A silent "this is mine" in a room where words belonged to microphones. Julie's vision blurred. Thomas cleared his throat like he'd swallowed pride. Fatima squeezed Julie's fingers so hard it almost hurt. On the last line, "different can be strong," Mr. Richard's face changed. Not softened. Deepened. As if stone remembered it had, once, been living rock underwater, shaped by time, capable of rounding edges. Awards time. Third place to a rocket. Second to a dog who finds home. First. The little girl's name. The eldest forgot to be cool and hooped. The middle child clapped before her brain could pull her hands back. Mr. Richard stood. Slowly. Fully. Like a man meeting hope head-on. Julie didn't stand at first. She sat still and let joy hit. Then she rose and clapped until her palms burned. That night the medal sat on the oak table like a small sun. The youngest pressed Julie, "Sit, table, together." Julie glanced toward the kitchen, where staff and rules lived. Fatima nodded toward the empty chair. Permission and blessing in one motion. Julie sat. They didn't know how to do it at first. This eating together without making the forks carry everything they'd never said. The eldest told a terrible joke. The middle child corrected the setup and accidentally made it funny. The youngest tapped family, together, happy and beamed at them all as if she'd invented the word. Mr. Richard stood in the doorway, sleeves rolled, tie loosened, watching like a man who'd found a window in a house he'd assumed had none. When plates were cleared, the child pressed Julie, "Story, again." So Julie told the next piece. The bird reached a fence post. From there, she could see farther. Not the whole forest. Just enough to make tomorrow belong to her. Mr. Richard stayed long after the story ended, listening to a silence that didn't press, one that rapped. Later, in the kitchen, the middle child hovered by the sink. "Were you always good at stories?" "No," Julie said. "I was good at being scared. Stories gave my fear something to hold on to that wasn't me." "You're not scared now." "I am," Julie said. "Every day. I just do the next right thing anyway." The girl nodded once, as if she'd been handed permission to be human without losing her edge. In the garage, the eldest waited with a football under his arm. "Your first touch wasn't terrible," he muttered. "High praise. If you want to practice sometime." "I want," Julie said, walking on before his courage cracked. He blew out a breath like he'd been holding it since breakfast. Julie's small room under the eaves felt like a pause button: single bed, creaking wardrobe, a desk that wobbled unless you placed your hand on the corner. She opened her sketchbook and drew a lapel line that curved like relief then sharpened like resolve. She wrote brave in the margin and underlined it twice. A knock. She stood. Mr. Richard stepped inside and immediately looked too big for the room. He took in the bed, the lamp, the sketchbook without approaching it. "I wanted to say, thank you. For today." It was hers, Julie said. "I was just beside her." "Sometimes being beside is the difference," he replied, voice lower than usual. He glanced toward the tiny shelf by the door, where a small tin box sat, circles embossed on its lid, a relic Julie had found in the laundry room and dusted clean. "I thought that was gone." "It was in a back cabinet," Julie said gently. "I didn't open it." "It was her mother's," he said, the words feeling dangerous as they left him. "Keep it safe." He swallowed. "Please." "I will." He hesitated, then, "There's a Paris trip soon." "A meeting. I'll need to coordinate schedules with you." "Of course." He stepped into the hall, stopped, looked back. His gaze wasn't cold. It wasn't soft. It was a crossing. "You've done more in 2 weeks than most." He didn't finish. He didn't have to. When he left, the air in the tiny room rearranged itself to make space for something unnamed. A soft scuffle at the base of the door. Julie opened it to an empty hall and a white envelope on the floor, crisp, heavy, her name typed in a university's exacting font. Julie. Admissions Office. New York Institute of Fashion. Her pulse spiked. She turned it over. Unsealed. "Congratulations." The word rang like a bell in a chapel that hadn't heard music since winter. Tuition details, dates, deposit deadlines. A beginning disguised as paperwork. Footsteps again, slow, sure. Mr. Richard. He saw the envelope in her hands and froze, then recalculated in place. Surprise. Calculation. Something like fear. "How long have you known?" he asked. 30 seconds, she said, voice thin with everything she was trying to hold. He looked from the letter to her, then toward the shadowed corridor that led to his daughter's room, where a medal hung from a bedpost like a promise that refused to dim. "We'll talk," he said. "When?" "In the morning." He left like a man walking into weather he couldn't predict and wouldn't avoid. Julie closed the door. The room felt smaller and larger at once. She set the envelope beside the tin box and placed her palm on both. Past and future under her hands, beating out unsteady, beautiful time. Down the hall, the little girl rolled over and, half asleep, reached toward the night air the way she'd reached toward Julie's wrist earlier, a reflex born of trust. Upstairs, a woman with a letter and a box stood very still and understood. The bond was no longer a kindness. It was a claim. And before this house learned how to live with joy, it would test every inch of it, forcing Julie to choose between the dream that had finally come for her and the family that had finally found her. The house had lived in silence for years. Not the peaceful kind, but the heavy kind, the kind that pressed into corners, filled empty chairs, and made every hallway echo with what was missing. But after the story competition, something shifted. The silence wasn't gone, but it had changed. It didn't weigh as much. Sometimes it even made room for laughter. The medal still gleamed around the youngest child's neck the next evening when she tugged Julie's sleeve and tapped her board. "Julie, sit, table, together." Julie hesitated. Staff usually ate in the kitchen, but Fatima nodded toward the empty chair. "Go," she whispered. Julie sat. The eldest leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, acting unimpressed. But halfway through the meal, he slid the salt toward her. "You look like you don't trust me with this," Julie teased. "I don't," he muttered, but his lips twitched in a grin. The middle child corrected his grammar mid-story. He groaned. She smirked. Julie laughed, and the sound rolled across the table like it belonged there. The youngest watched it all with wide eyes, tapping her medal against her chest as if she already knew this night would matter. From the doorway, Mr. Richard lingered. He didn't step inside. He didn't say a word. But his gaze stayed on the table longer than usual, as if he couldn't quite pull himself away. Over the next weeks, changes came quietly, like sunlight slipping under curtains. The eldest challenged Julie to basketball in the driveway. "Bet you can't shoot from the free throw line," he said. Julie bounced the ball once, twice, then sank it clean. "Bet you can't block me," she shot back. His laugh was loud, real. He didn't notice that it startled the gardener across the hedge, and used to such sounds in this house. The middle child hovered more often in the kitchen, tracing Julie's sketchbook with her finger. "You draw." "Sometimes," Julie said. "When words won't hold still." "Can I see?" "Not yet," Julie said softly. "But one day." The girl didn't push. She didn't walk away either. And the youngest, she blossomed. She pressed words on her board with more confidence, wrote crooked letters in her notebook, and tugged Julie to her room each night for the next piece of the little bird story. The bird had reached the top of the fence post, Julie whispered one night, the lamp casting a soft halo on the wall. It wasn't the sky, but it wasn't the ground either. From there, she could see direction. The little girl tapped bird, different, strong, again. Julie kissed her forehead. Yes. Again. In the hallway, unseen, Mr. Richard stopped. He leaned one hand against the wall and closed his eyes. His daughter was finding strength in ways doctors said she wouldn't. And it was Julie's voice carrying her there. But in her attic room, when the house was asleep, Julie unfolded the letter again. "Congratulations. You have been accepted to the New York Institute of Fashion." She traced the words with her thumb. They glowed like possibility, and burned like betrayal. Because if she left, she wouldn't just be chasing her dream. She'd be breaking a bond. Every time she tucked the letter back under her pillow, her chest tightened. "How can I leave now?" One morning, Mr. Richard adjusted his tie at the mirror. "There's a business trip in Paris. I'll be gone 3 days. Can you manage schedules?" Julie nodded. "Of course." His voice dipped lower. "She does better with you than anyone else. Don't let her slip." "I won't." Their eyes met in the glass. His held a flicker of something unfamiliar, trust, maybe, or fear. Then it was gone. September came. With it, Mr. Richard's birthday, a date the family usually let slip past in silence. "We should do something," Fatima said one evening in the kitchen. "He hasn't celebrated in years." Thomas leaned against the counter. "The kids will follow Julie's lead." The eldest overheard. "A party? He'll hate it." "Or maybe," Julie said, "he'll remember what it feels like to be surprised for the right reasons." Even the middle child joined the planning. "We could decorate the dining room," she said. The youngest pressed party, Daddy, happy until Julie promised. They plotted in whispers and stolen minutes. Balloons were smuggled into cupboards. Streamers hidden behind pantry doors. A cake ordered under Fatima's name. But Julie worked on something else. At night, by lamplight, she cut fabric, stitched seams, pressed collars. Her gift would not come from a store. It would come from her own hands, a suit designed with precision and courage, tailored for the man who had built walls around his heart. The night arrived. The dining room glowed under strings of lights. Balloons hovered in corners. The children lined up, barely able to contain their giggles. Thomas stood by the record player, ready to flip the switch. Fatima carried the cake, frosting shimmering under candles. Keys jingled at the front door. Footsteps. The sound of a briefcase being set down. Now, Julie whispered. Surprise. The word hit Mr. Richard like a wave. He froze in the doorway, eyes wide. For a moment, he didn't look like the unshakable man who commanded boardrooms. He looked like someone who had forgotten people remembered him. The eldest grinned, holding out a basketball jersey he'd saved his allowance to buy. Happy birthday, Dad. The middle child presented a leather-bound notebook, her initials carved in the corner. For meetings. Or, for memories. The youngest stepped forward, metal shining, and tapped her board, Daddy, happy, love. Then she hugged his leg, holding on tight. He bent down, lifted her into his arms, and kissed her hair. His eyes glistened. And then Julie stepped forward. In her hands, the suit she had sewn. Black, sleek, perfectly tailored, with a subtle lining of deep blue, the color of midnight just before dawn. Happy birthday, she said, her voice steady though her hands trembled. He reached out, touched the fabric, and froze. His eyes lifted to hers. For a moment, the room faded. Balloons, cake, candles, all gone. Just him, her, and the gift between them. He swallowed hard. You made this? Julie nodded. I wanted to give you something that no one else could. Silence stretched. Then, slowly, he smiled. A real smile. One that cracked the mask he had worn for years. The children cheered. Music played. Cake was cut. But all through the night, Mr. Richard kept glancing at the suit, his hand brushing over the fabric as if it carried more than thread and stitches. Later, when the guests had gone and the house had quieted, he stood in the foyer holding the suit. He didn't see Julie watching from the staircase, her heart pounding. He whispered to himself, almost too soft to hear, this changes everything. Julie pressed a hand to the railing, torn between hope and fear. Because she knew. Tomorrow he would wear that suit to Paris. And the moment he stepped into that room, her dream would collide with his world in a way neither of them were ready for. Morning cracked open clean and bright, the way some days do when they plan to change your life. Mr. Richard stood by the foyer mirror, sliding into the suit Julie had made. The jacket settled on his shoulders like it had been waiting for him. Sharp lapel. Clean line. A midnight blue lining that caught the light when he moved. Too much, he asked, trying for casual and missing. Julie shook her head. Exactly enough. He checked his watch. Flight at 10. The little girl patted down in socks, hair still sleep-rumpled, board in hand. She tapped 3 words, Daddy, Paris, back. He crouched to her level. Back, he said, tapping with her, letting his finger press the word so she could feel the promise. He kissed her hair, then looked up at Julie. Keep her routine tight. Always. He nodded once and left. The door closed with a soft click that carried more weight than it should have. Julie stood there a beat longer than made sense. Then she rolled her shoulders and moved. Breakfast. Therapy. School drop-off. Schedules stitched together like seams. But the house felt different. Light on a threshold. Breath before a race. At noon, while the little girl traced letters at the big oak table, Julie's phone buzzed. Unknown international number. She silenced it. Focused on vowels, on patience, on the tiny curve of an D. The phone buzzed again. Then again. Take it, Fatima murmured from the doorway. If it's trouble, we fix it. If it's luck, we accept it. Julie stepped into the pantry, thumb hovering. Answered. A woman's voice, crisp and bright, French accent softened by years in boardrooms. Hello, am I speaking with Julie? I'm Claire. We met, indirectly. Indirectly? I'm in Paris with Mr. Richard. He's in a meeting with our executive team. He's wearing a suit that is, stopping conversations. Julie's mouth went dry. He wore it. He did. We would like to talk about a capsule. Men's suiting first. Perhaps 3 silhouettes. Lining treatments. Textiles with story. You are, independent. Julie's hand braced the shelf. I'm, working on that. Good. Then consider this a pre-order request. If it goes well, we discuss a trunk show. Are you able to send sketches by tomorrow? Tomorrow. The word hit like weather. I can send something, Julie said slowly. Yes. Wonderful. Claire's smile was audible. I'll send terms for sample development. And Julie? Yes. Your name should be on a label. Put it there. The line clicked off. Julie stared at the flour tins as if they could explain the new shape of her life. In the dining room, the little girl looked up, head tilted. She pressed Julie, okay. Julie swallowed the tremor in her chest and stepped back into the light. Okay, she said. Better than okay. The little girl tapped brave and grinned without sound, like joy had learned to move through her eyes. The boardroom across the ocean, what we learn later. We don't see it then. We learn it in pieces, that evening, from a hesitant text and a late call. But here is what happened. Paris. A boardroom of glass and steel, with a skyline that makes men speak carefully. Mr. Richard arrived in a suit that didn't ask for attention, it commanded it by fitting him like clarity. Mid-meeting, a partner's spouse stepped in, the kind who knows where all the money actually moves. Her gaze snagged on the jacket. Who did this? A designer I know, he said, instinctively protective. Name? Julie. Company? He hesitated. She is, about to be one. There was silence. Then a laugh, delighted. Good. We're tired of old names telling old stories. Send her sketches. If they hold up, we place a private order. My husband will buy suits. I'll buy dresses. The wives will ask where we found them. The rest writes itself. That's what Paris does when it approves. It doesn't whisper. It opens doors. The afternoon became a sprint done in soft shoes. School pickup. Snack. Homework. Therapy. The eldest bounced a ball in the driveway and asked if Julie had time to shoot. She took 5 minutes and sank 2 clean shots, then sent him inside to start math. The middle child hovered in the kitchen. You're different today, the girl said, suspicious and curious at once. What happened? Someone in Paris liked the suit, Julie said as she washed strawberries. They want sketches. For what? One suit. A few, Julie said. Maybe more. Like, a collection. Julie kept her voice steady. Something like that. The girl looked at her as if seeing not just the person in front of her, but the outline of a future drawn around her. Are you going to leave? It landed like a stone in a still pond. Ripples everywhere. I'm here, Julie said. Right now. That's the truth. The girl nodded without being satisfied. Right now isn't always. I know. At the table, the little girl tapped Julie, stay. Family and watched Julie's face the way some children watch the sky before rain. We're together, Julie said, and meant it with everything she had. When the kids were down and the dishwasher hummed like a lullaby, Julie climbed to her small room under the eaves. She set out pencils. Paper. The tin box sat on the shelf, circles glinting. She touched the lid, like a habit. Not tonight. She drew. A single-breasted cut that said authority without armor. A double-breasted that moved when a man moved, not after. A soft-shouldered jacket for people who hated suits until they met theirs. For lining, stories. Midnight blue. Riverstone gray. A thin stripe hidden inside the vent like a secret you offer only to those who look close. She built a women's dress, too, with a drape that felt like relief. Another with a waist that turned spine into silhouette without apology. And a jumpsuit for all the women who needed pockets and didn't want to ask for them. She labeled each sketch with one word. Direction. Steady. Again. Brave. At midnight, her phone lit the desk. Email. Pre-order terms. Claire, efficient as weather. Sample quantities. Delivery windows. A request, send bios and label art. Label art. Her name. Heartbeat in ink. She wrote it once. Then again, with a steadier hand. Julie. That's when the second email hit. New York Institute of Fashion, final reminder. Deposit due Friday by 5 p.m. Enrollment window closes thereafter. Friday. 2 days. The same week Paris asked for sketches. The same week a little girl had finally written her name in one confident line. Julie stared until the words blurred. She closed her eyes. Breathed in the quiet. Breathed out something that sounded like a prayer and a promise breaking bread. Her phone rang at 12:41 a.m. Paris again. Julie, Claire said, voice bright with momentum. I showed your initial lines to 2 people who matter. They're interested. Can you be in Paris next week to fit samples on models? Next week. Julie looked at the ceiling like it could post answers. I have responsibilities. Of course, Claire said, meaning solve them. We can fly you business, cover hotel, assist with a small atelier space for 3 days. If you prefer remote, we can try, but it's cleaner here. Think of this as a door. Not many open twice. The door image lodged. I'll confirm tomorrow, Julie said quietly. Morning your time. Good, Claire said. And Julie? Yes. Don't let fear wear the clothes of responsibility. They looked the same in dim light. The line went dead. Julie set the phone down like it weighed more than glass ever has. She printed her name again under the lapel sketch. Julie. The word looked both too small and exactly right. Morning came early. Houses with kids don't care if you slept. The eldest was already in the driveway when she stepped outside with coffee. 2 shots before school, he asked, bouncing the ball. 2, she agreed, and sank the first off the backboard, the second clean. He laughed, lighter than last week, and jogged inside to grab his bag without being asked. The middle child waited by the door with a list she'd made for the grocery run. I put cinnamon on here, she said, carefully cool. Then, in a smaller voice, and strawberries. 4, because she likes them. Good call, Julie said. Thanks. The little girl ran her palm over the medal still hanging from her bedpost, then pressed school, ready on her board and held up her backpack to be checked. Julie zipped it, smoothed her hair, and tapped Brave with her. They were halfway to the car when the kitchen speaker chimed. Incoming call. Speaker auto-connect. Mr. Richards' voice filled the room they'd just left. Julie. You there? Thomas tapped the button. She's loading the car. Tell her, he paused, breath audible over a city 6 time zones away. Tell her I told them her name. I told them she's the one. Anne. They believed me. Thomas looked toward the door where the morning light was already winning. She'll hear it. Julie heard it 5 minutes later when Thomas replayed the message through the open window, the words bleeding onto the driveway like sunlight. She stood very still. The youngest pressed Julie, happy. On her board, face tipped up. Yes, Julie said, voice thick. I'm happy. She wasn't sure which part scared her more, that it was true, or that it had the power to rearrange everything. Mr. Richard returned on day 3, late. Jet-lagged but wired. He didn't bother with the briefcase. He came straight to the dining room, where the kids were pretending not to wait. How was it? The eldest asked, trying to be casual and failing. Productive, Mr. Richard said, and the word had the soft around it that only appears when productive also means good. He looked at Julie then, quick, a flash, and away again before the look could be a statement. They want sketches, he said, unnecessarily. I sent them, Julie said, equally unnecessary. The middle child breathed out like she'd been holding air for 2 days. The eldest smirked to hide his grin. The little girl reached for Julie's hand under the table and squeezed, small fingers, strong. After dinner, the kids scattered. The little girl tugged Julie toward the stairs. Bedtime now. Story now. Safety now. Mr. Richard lingered in the doorway. Can we talk after? He asked. Julie nodded. After. Upstairs, the nightlight glowed. Julie sat on the edge of the bed and folded the story around them like a blanket. The little bird stood at the edge of a new branch, she whispered. Below her, everything she knew. Above her, air. In her chest, a small drum. Not fear. Not exactly. More like, the sound a door makes before it opens. The little girl pressed Bird, again, brave, and then Julie, stay, with a look that made Julie want to promise forever. I'm here, Julie said. I'm here tonight. I'm here now. The child touched Julie's wrist and let go. It felt like a seal pressed into warm wax. Downstairs, the house hummed with sleepy machines. Mr. Richard stood by the window, jacket off, shirt sleeves rolled. The suit, the one she made, hung on the back of a chair as if it were listening too. They want you in Paris next week, he said. No buffer. No throat clearing this time. I know. I told them you can't abandon your responsibilities. He stopped. That wasn't fair. I shouldn't have spoken for you. Julie folded her hands so he wouldn't see them shake. It's not unfair. It's true. I have responsibilities. He nodded, jaw tight. We can hire temporary help. If you go. Temporary. The word scratched. He looked at the chair instead of her. I also told them you're the reason my daughter sleeps without waking up scared now. The reason my house has laughter again. He swallowed. The reason I wore a suit that made people listen differently. Silence sat between them like a guest with a secret. Then you understand why I'm split in half, Julie said, finally. He let out a breath that sounded like he'd been holding it since the plane landed. I do. Her phone buzzed on the table. Both of them looked at it like it might explode. Email, New York Institute of Fashion, final reminder. Tomorrow. 5 p.m. deposit. Or the slot goes to someone else. She turned the screen over. What is it? He asked. School, she said. New York. They want a deposit by tomorrow. He stared at the flipped phone like he could see through plastic and time. If you go to Paris, can you still do it? I don't know, she said. Flights. Fittings. Timelines. Money. He lifted his gaze to hers. What do you want? The question was too big for the room. She didn't answer. Not yet. He nodded like that was honest enough. If you decide to do both, he said, voice rough, I can help. Help how? Funding. Logistics. Whatever this takes. He paused. If you decide to stay, I'll still help. Make the program remote. Hire teachers to come here. Build a studio upstairs. A humorless smile. I'm a man who solves problems with resources, Julie. It's what I know. Her throat closed. She nodded once. Thank you. He picked up the jacket and smoothed the lapel with his thumb. When I wore this in that room, people listened to me differently. Not because I had power. Because I had a story on me. His eyes met hers. You did that. The air shifted. Dangerous. Tender. Both. He set the jacket down like it might break and stepped back before the moment could choose a direction. Decide by morning, he said, softer now. Claire needs an answer. And he cut himself off. Good night. Good night. In her room, Julie spread the sketches across the bed like a map. Paris on one side. New York on the other. The house and the child and the family she never meant to love like this, right in the middle. Her phone buzzed again. Claire. Flights held. Noon next Tuesday. Need yes by 9 a.m. Paris time. Then another. Institute, final reminder, deposit due Friday by 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. No extensions. And then, soft footsteps in the hall. The little girl, in the doorway, blanket dragging, eyes huge. She didn't use the board. She didn't need it. She reached out her hand. Stay, she mouthed. No sound. Just shape. Julie's heart split cleanly and completely. She lifted the child into her arms, held her until her breathing slowed, then carried her back to bed and kissed her forehead. When she returned to her room, the emails glowed. The sketches waited. The tin box on the shelf seemed to listen. 2 doors. 1 heart. In 6 hours, Julie would have to choose which one to open first. Morning broke soft and pale, like the sky knew someone in this house was about to do something that would change everything. Julie sat at her small desk under the eaves, the lamp still on even though daylight had arrived. Sketches covered the wood like wings, menswear lines that cut clean through a room, women's pieces that moved like relief, a jumpsuit with pockets that refused to apologize. On the bed, her laptop blinked with 2 tabs. Paris, flights held, answer by 9 a.m. Paris time. New York, deposit due, Friday 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. 2 doors. 1 heart. And a family that had stopped feeling like a job. Downstairs, the house stretched awake, pipes murmuring, a kettle sighing, someone opening the silverware drawer with a clatter that meant, we're still living. Julie closed her eyes and pressed her fingers to her pulse until the beat slowed enough to move. She tucked the little girl's voice board under her arm, left on Julie's desk last night like a trust fall, and headed to the kitchen. Good morning, Fatima said, already pouring coffee the way she did when she could smell trouble from a hallway away. Drink. Then breathe. Julie smiled, grateful and wrecked. I'm breathing, she lied, and the lie tasted like fear and love mixed together. The eldest clomped in, tossed a basketball lightly from hand to hand. 2 shots before school, he asked, trying to pretend he didn't care about the answer. 2, Julie said, and the word steadied her. Routines make bridges. The middle child followed with a list folded into perfect thirds. I added cinnamon and strawberries, she said, pretending it was logistics. Her eyes said, I'm watching you. Tiny feet, soft as moth wings. The little girl entered last, curls mussed, metal catching the light as it swung from the bedpost string she'd tied to her backpack. She pressed the board without sitting. "Julie, stay, together." Julie's throat tightened. She tapped "stay back," then added "now." Truth, present tense. They ate. They moved. They pretended the air didn't weigh more than yesterday. Julie wiped a smear of jam from the little girl's chin and felt the clock in her pocket, a phone alarm set to the time Paris would give up waiting. "Free throw line," the boy said on the driveway, tossing the ball. "Loser does dishes." "Deal," Julie said, setting her feet. The shot kissed the backboard and dropped. He groaned, laughed, took his shot, missed, chased the rebound like pride owed him money. He passed the ball back, then didn't let go. "You look like you're here but not here," he muttered, eyes on the rim. Julie held the ball too. "I have a big decision to make." "About us?" It came out sharper than he meant. "About me," Julie said. "But it touches you." He nodded once, hard, like he'd decided not to cry when he was 8 and hadn't since. "If you leave, just, don't do it like the others. Not in the middle of the night." "I won't," she said. "I don't do midnight goodbyes." He released the ball. She shot. Net. He smiled without trying to hide it. "Figures. Inside," she said softly. "School doesn't care about our jumpers." He jogged past her, bumping her shoulder like brothers do when they won't say "I'll miss you" out loud. The middle child waited by the sink, hands flat by the dish rack, face practiced into calm. "You're leaving," she said, not a question. "I'm deciding," Julie said. "That's the same thing to people who get left." Julie stepped closer, lowered her voice. "What would make it different?" The girl swallowed. "If you told the truth fast." Julie did. "Paris wants me next week. New York wants my deposit tomorrow. Both are real. Both are good. Both hurt. Can you do both?" "Maybe. With help. With chaos." The girl looked at the floor first, then up at Julie. "Chaos is fine," she said, chin lifting. "We lived in silence. Chaos is better." Julie laughed once, wet, surprised. "You're a knife when you talk." "I'm tired of dull," the girl said, and left before emotion could find her. Afternoon nap fought the little girl and lost. She woke cranky, clung to Julie's sleeve, and dragged the voice board into her lap like an anchor she wanted to carry. "Story?" Julie asked. "Bird, again, brave," the board answered, sure and bright. The bird stood where the branch thinned, Julie said, voice low, the room warm and drowsy. Below, everything familiar. Above, the place she'd dreamed about. She didn't know which way would hurt more, staying, or leaping and missing. The little girl's eyes didn't blink. "So she did something new," Julie went on. "She asked for help. A wind. A friend. A leaf that wouldn't break. Turns out, the forest had been waiting to help the whole time." The little girl pressed together, "Then stay. Then, after a beat, fly." Julie kissed her hair. "Both," she whispered. "Somehow, both." Her phone rang at 4:07 p.m. Claire. Paris sounded like the edge of champagne and decisions. "Julie, love, I have the atelier and fitting scheduled. If you can be here Tuesday, we can make this fly before anyone else knows they should be chasing you." Julie paused. The house hummed, dishwasher, hallway steps, the soft clack of piano keys down the hall where the middle child tried scales when anxiety needed a grid. "I'm not a love person," Julie said, surprising herself. Claire laughed. "Good. Then be a label person. We'll wire the advance the moment you confirm. This is your season." Julie leaned against the counter. If I say yes, I won't do midnight goodbyes. Then don't. Do midnight packing, Claire said. And bring the story that sews people back together. You have it in your hands. I can hear it over the phone. I'll call before your morning, Julie said, and hung up before the room could spin. Night arrived wearing rain. The front lights turned the drops into threads that stitched the driveway to the dark. The kids went down. One after a deal for an extra chapter, one after a fight with a math problem that finally surrendered, one after Bird, again, brave. Julie found Mr. Richard in the study, tie loosened, sleeves rolled, the suit she'd made draped on a chair like a trophy that was also a promise. They want you next week, he said. I told them you might need to split time. They said they'd build around you. Julie stood in the doorway. You did that? You did this, he said, glancing at the jacket, then back at her. I moved a calendar. Silence. Not the bad kind. The kind that lets words arrive dressed right. I can help, he said finally. If you choose Paris and New York. If it's money, logistics, coverage with the kids. I can help. You don't owe me that. He shook his head. It's not an owing thing. It's a right thing. Her eyes burned. She blinked the sting back and stepped closer to the chair where the jacket lay. That lining, she said, touching the midnight blue. It's the color right before morning. That moment. He smiled from somewhere unguarded. I know. He put his hand on the chair back, not touching her, close enough to count as a kind of courage. Julie. I've struck deals across oceans. I've made numbers say yes when they were born to say no. But this? He gestured toward the ceiling, the rooms, the soft thunder of rain. I can't control this. I don't want to. I just don't want to lose the person who made the house breathe again. The words hung there, impossible and simple. Julie felt them land and split into grief and gratitude both. Whatever you choose, he said, voice lower, I will find a way to make the choice kinder around you. She nodded. It was either that or cry. After midnight, the house went still. Julie sat at her desk, the little tin box on the shelf catching lamp light in its circle pattern. She touched it with 2 fingers the way some people touch lucky coins. She hadn't opened it. Some doors wait. Laptop open. 2 tabs. One held a plane. One held a semester. She opened her sketchbook to a blank page and wrote one word across the top, direction. Then she drew a line down the center and listed truths on both sides. Paris, atelier, fittings, a label that starts with her first name and refuses to apologize, a room full of people saying yes because of the suit she made in this very house. Also, a little girl waking up and scanning the doorway for her. New York, the foundation she'd promised herself in the dark, technique, critique, a studio that turns talent into muscle memory. Also, the same little girl, fingers on the voice board, pressing stay with eyes that had learned to ask without words. She let the page sit. She let the lamp hum. She let her hands shake until they didn't. Then she clicked. We don't see which tab. We see the breath she takes afterward, hard, then even. We see her palm press flat to the desk like she's blessing something she can't unmake. We see a single tear land on a margin that says brave and make the ink lift a little, like a promise waking up. Rain cleaned the night off everything. The driveway steamed. The kitchen smelled like cinnamon. The eldest wandered in and tried to mask looking for answers by opening and closing the fridge twice. Gross orange juice, he announced, because 15-year-old boys say anything when they're scared. Noted, Julie said, cracking eggs. We'll get the good one. He crossed his arms, failed to maintain the scowl, and bumped her shoulder. 2 after school. 2 after school. The middle child sat with a pencil already sharpened, waiting to rewrite a list no one asked for. Julie slid a sticky note onto the table. Studio supply run later, she said. I need your taste. The pencil stopped. The girl didn't smile, exactly. She unfolded. Okay. Tiny feet. The little girl padded in, hair wild, pajamas too short after a growth spurt they hadn't celebrated yet. She pressed story. Bird, again and then, eyes on Julie, family, together. We're together, Julie said, tapping together with her. And the bird, she paused, because today the story had to hold more than bedtime, learned that flying and staying weren't opposites. She learned to build a nest high enough to see farther, and strong enough to keep coming back. The little girl pressed again and then brave and leaned against Julie's hip like an answer. Footsteps in the doorway. Mr. Richard. He looked at the faces of his children and then at Julie and knew. Not the specifics, the shape. After breakfast, he said lightly, basketball champion versus coffee champion. I'm taking bets. The eldest groaned. You don't even play. I negotiate, Mr. Richard said. Close enough. He poured coffee, met Julie's gaze over the mug, and gave the tiniest nod a person can give while still calling it a nod. I heard your choice without hearing it. I'm with you anyway. There was no midnight goodbye. There was no whispered exit. There was a list on the counter in the middle child's neat hand, milk. Cinnamon. Strawberries. There was a second list beneath it, Julie's, atelier. Muslin. Chalk. Tape. Needles. There was a third list no one wrote but everyone felt, calls at 7. FaceTimes at 8. Stories recorded. A promise to come back and a plan to make back mean something. In the little girl's room, Julie recorded 3 versions of the bird story, short, medium, long, on the tablet, her voice soft, steady. Press this when you want me, she said, showing the icon. I'll answer when I can. And when I can't, this will. The little girl placed her palm over Julie's voice on the screen and then over Julie's wrist. Together, then stay, then fly. Both, Julie whispered again. We're going to do both. By afternoon, it was obvious enough in the smallest ways. A garment bag hung from a closet knob, the good one. A passport sat tucked under a notebook on the desk. The institute's email was marked red with a confirmation number for a deferred start, a semester adjusted, not erased, attached to a receipt paid by a man who solved problems with resources and had learned to call it care. An itinerary waited in her inbox from Paris, flights confirmed, hotel booked, an atelier address that made her stomach flip like a new love. 2 doors, both cracked open. Not tidy. Not safe. Alive. They sat on the front steps in that orange hour houses look most honest. The eldest dribbled lazily and pretended not to be proud of promising to hold the fort. The middle child had her sketchbook on her knees and drew seams with the seriousness of a surgeon. The little girl leaned against Julie and watched the sky like it was a screen showing everything they'd become. Mr. Richard stood, hands in pockets, suit off, man visible. Flights are early, he said softly. I know. You'll call. Not an order. Not even a full question. Every day, Julie said. He nodded, looked at his daughter, and then at the woman who had taught his house how to breathe. We'll hold the rope, he said. You go as far as you need. Julie smiled, and the smile cracked because that's what smiles do when they're asked to hold too much. I'll tie knots, she said. So I can climb back faster. The youngest pressed family, together, always, and tucked her face into Julie's shoulder so the others wouldn't see her eyes shine. The porch light clicked on by itself, like a blessing. That night, Julie recorded one more story for the tablet. The bird stood on a branch that reached both ways, she said, voice steady as her heart allowed. Toward the nest and toward the sky. She asked, which way is right? And the wind said, the way you choose, again and again, with love. She ended the recording, wiped her face, and laughed, because sometimes tears and laughter share a hallway. She packed. She placed the tin box in her bag without opening it. Some doors keep the promise better closed. She left her sketchbook on the desk for the middle child with a note, add a page whenever you want. We're building this together. She set the basketball by the door. 2 shots tomorrow, even if they had to be at dawn. And before she turned off the lamp, she wrote one word across a new, clean page. Together. If this story hit you in the heart, tell me this. What would you choose in Julie's place, and why? Paris now, school later, ride the open door. School now, Paris later, build the foundation first. Do both, imperfectly, defer, juggle, and fight for, together. Drop your answer in the comments, your reasons might help someone facing their own 2 doors. Like the video if you felt the tug. Subscribe for the next story where we see if both can really hold. Different isn't broken. It's a direction. And sometimes, the bravest path is the one you keep choosing, again and again, with love.